Hey guys, welcome to Just Be Handy. We're going to put the power cylinder together today. I've run into a lot of issues, and one of the issues was, and I think you've seen it in one of my previous videos, is how the machining was. Well, I had to clean off all this metal shavings that were here from the bad machining, and I cleaned that up with a rat tail file, and I also smoothed everything down, tried to make sure I took care of all the rough edges. Another thing, if you'll notice, some of these holes are bigger than others, and these all have the same size bolt. And not only that, but these bigger holes here had flashing on them that I had to go ahead and basically take down with like 300 grit to 600 grit sandpaper till it became smooth, because otherwise the bolts, when they go in here, they're not going to sit flush. Okay. Another thing I've done is I've made the sleeve to go in here so that when the bearing sits in here, this will not allow oil to again leak from this area back into the intake portion and then get sucked in and get that get the bar oil sucked into the engine and snuff it out like it was doing before. So just a lot of cleaning, a lot of prepping. As you can see, I've gone and made sure everything is nice and clean and smooth. What I've done after washing everything with soap, taking a toothbrush, I use dish soap and so on, I basically took some CLP like this and then sprayed a couple of sprays in here and used this type of tack cloth to just go in there and wipe it down, and it's silky smooth right now because it leaves that nice protective coating. Another issue I had was the rings. One of them had a little, basically something went through one of the rings, so I had to smooth them down with some sandpaper and Scotch-Brite to get the rough edges out. And then I do have one of the rings here. You'll probably be able to just see it. One of the rings had something go through, and that left a little bit of a flat spot, so I've cleaned it up with the sandpaper and the Scotch-Brite, took off all the rough edges, and it's ready to be used. So this will be put onto the piston here shortly, and then we will start assembling this. So one of the ways I've decided to assemble this, right or wrong, is to go ahead and put the rings on to the piston, and then also the small end bearing I have soaking in some Berrymans to get it clean. And once I have it clean, I'll show you how I did that, and then it will ride in here. And that will help me figure out how, once I put the bearing on and all the seals on, I'll let it sit into this power cylinder, get it in there, and then put the end on it. One of the things I've decided to do is, you see there how there's an opening here with the retaining ring. I've decided that when I put the bearing in, that open spot is going to be embedded in here, because I don't want those ends to play around and eventually chafe on something being in the open area. I don't know if it's that critical, but we'll see. Made sure these seals were nice and flexible. I used some 303 on them. Cleaned up everything again with some brake parts cleaner and just a Scotch-Brite. Did use a knife on here to just scrape this, or a razor blade, and whatever I couldn't get off, I ended up just putting a piece of sandpaper down on the workbench and doing figure eights till I got it all nice and smooth. So that's kind of how I clean this. Again, for the areas that have, like this guy, you can't get it nice and flat, you just do it on the edge of the table. That's kind of what I've done so far. So now it's time to just start putting it back together. So first I'm going to get these rings, and what we'll do is get some of this AMSOIL Saber that I use, and I'll use it for my assembly lube as well. So I'll just put it in the cap, best place to put it. Just put a little bit in here for assembly. Another thing I like to do is just get these little straws that come on the spray bottles, and we'll just grab a little and put it in for the bearings. Just kind of drip it in there. You just want enough to be able to do the assembly without any issue. And everything was cleaned with, again, brake cleaner, so it already is ready to go. Now for the piston, one of the things you have to watch out for, and as you can see here, there's a couple of pins in here, so you have to make sure that when you put the rings on, that the pins don't interfere with the compression. So here's a pin and here's another pin, and see if I can get more light on that. That's probably too much light. All right, so you want to make sure that the opening of the rings centers around those pins, so when you go to put it into the cylinder, they don't get crunched. So one of the things you could do here is just put a little bit of this oil on here and just run it over the ring. Okay, and what I like to do is just kind of put it over just a little bit here at the end and slowly open it. There we go. It went down one. Then get this other side to go. There we go. Now again, should be nice and free and clear, and there's that pin. And we'll just do the other ring. Make sure it's nice and dry here. Then put some lube on it. And this will prevent them from rusting too, because these are just cast iron rings. They're not the chrome moly rings. And just take your time. Don't stretch these out too much. There we go. And again, you just got to make sure they're centered around those pins. If you can see, there's a pin there, and the gaps are centered. Okay. Another thing is just go ahead and put that lube on the piston. It is going to smoke when you start it. That's okay. And then we want to get it into these bearings as well. Every bearing should have a significant amount of oil. All right, so now I'm going to go get that small end bearing, wipe my hands, and then I'll get back to you with putting that on, and then we'll put everything in the cylinder. The cylinder here, I'm just going to put some in with my finger. It has a nice lead-in chamfer here, so I don't really need a tool to put this together. That lead-in chamfer will get the rings compressed. I just have to make sure that the gaps are in the proper spot and nothing is going to bind as I slide it in. All right guys, in this portion I just wanted to talk about how I clean this small bearing, the small end bearing here. You could see it's very clean. What I did is I put it in this little ceramic plate, put it in there, and filled it to the top of the bearing with this Berryman's. It's basically like using brake parts cleaner, but it does break down solvents and carbon and things like that. You don't know what got into the bearing when the saw was burning that dirty oil or bar oil. But look at all the stuff that came out of here, guys. See how much like little metal flakes and things that came out, and that was just letting it soak in there for a while, and then I took it out with a pair of pliers. I held on to the bearing so it wouldn't spin dry, and I hit it with some shop air at about 100 psi. I did not let it spin, because letting it freely spin, you're going to overspeed that bearing and probably ruin the film on the bearing rollers, the chrome plating. So I don't recommend you spin it up. I mean, it sounds cool, but it's not good for the bearing. But it gets rid of all the junk behind there. So now I have a good clean bearing. And this is a good ENA bearing, which is rated for 17,500 RPM. Some of the aftermarket bearings are only good up to 5,000 RPM. So be careful what you buy as a replacement. Alright, so Berryman's to break all this junk down and get it cleaned. I let it soak in there for a couple of hours, every once in a while, just agitating it, taking it out, and then I blew it with shop air, 100 psi, but I held on to the bearing on the inside so it wouldn't rotate. And as you can see how clean it is. And now I'll, when I go to install it, I'll just put some 2-cycle oil, synthetic, to start for startup. Okay, as you saw, I've got the bearing. It's all clean. Now I'm going to put it on. Now I did remember that it was this way with the numbers, and name ENA was towards the engine before. So now I'm going to turn this around. So first I'm going to put some oil in here, get it in there fairly well, get it in all of these bearings so that they all have a sufficient amount for startup and break-in, so we don't run this thing dry. But try not to get it on the outside, because here you have to make sure that this seals properly with this sealer. So it's best to not get anything on the externals, keep them nice and dry. Alright, so I'll slide this on, and it slides on real easy. And then we'll put the seal on as well. Get some oil on that here. Don't want to run the seal dry. And again, you don't want to get any on the outside of it, because it will have a sealer on it. And I was thankful that the seals came out really well and will go on really well. You have to kind of slowly put that on. As you can see here, I've got it lubed, and you just kind of have to try and push it on really nice and even. There we go. And you don't want this butting up against all the way but we'll get it in and then get everything situated. Okay. Make sure that first you're going to align everything, so the areas where the bearings are and so on. Then slowly double check here. Okay, make sure everything is lined up, and slowly just kind of give it a little wiggle. There we go. And it'll go in. Then we just have to line up this with the ring groove, and then as I said, I'm going to keep this to the top and just have it seat. Now for this bearing, you don't want it all the way in and you don't want it too far out. So anyways, we'll pull this back up just a little bit to get to be able to get the silicone sealer all around here. But before we do that, we make sure it moves up and down just fine. All right, so next I'm going to basically get off all of the oil that may have gotten on everything while I was sliding this in. We'll let it sit here for a little minute here, and then I'm going to get some of that brake parts cleaner on a rag and clean it all off. Here we go, some brake parts cleaner. All right, we're just going to wipe down all these surfaces to make sure that all this Berryman's, all the silicone sealer will adhere very well now that we've got this on. There we go. All right, so we're going to pull the bearing back enough so that it gets lubed in this kind of a line. All right, so what are we going to use to seal it up? Well, I usually use Yamabond and Honda Bond, and I was looking on the internet for things about McCulloch's and porting, and I ran into the website of what I think is a wonderful resource, Tinman Saws, and he was using this Permatex gasket maker, the MotoSeal. So I'm going to try that out because it had a -65 to 400 degree Fahrenheit application, and it seems to be ideal for the case halves. The Yamabond and the Honda Bond are a good one that I've used on regular motorcycles and stuff before. But I was willing to try this. So if you guys have never heard of Tinman, please go to his website. He's a sweet guy, tells it like it is, does an awesome job, and wants to teach everybody. So please check him out. A very good resource for you guys. So what I'm going to do next is just put this all around. I'm going to do it by hand and just get it all over here, get it where it needs to be. So here we go. And don't worry about getting it a little bit on the rotating parts right now. It's going to be okay. And you don't need to go to town and put more than what I'm just putting here. It's going to squeeze out everywhere anyways, and you're going to do both sides. And again, like I said, it has to go on the bearing anyways, so just kind of be careful. Don't get it into the bearing surfaces, of course, but it's going to go on the shell of the bearing to hold that in place. All right, so then we're going to put some right in here. And you need to let this stuff cure for like 24 hours. All right, so we're going to put this in, make sure everything sits properly. There we go. All right, and then we're going to actually put it on the surface of the bearing. Now the bearing does get captured with more from the other part of the crankcase here, but we need to put some here as well. All right. And this will prevent air leaks from the outside. The seals have to do their bit, of course. Okay, so now we need to do this. And again, what I'm going to do here is, because I know there's an issue with this being so compromised, I'm going to stick some of this PEX tubing in here. And I've already checked it out. It will sink in here and not cause a problem. On this other side, I'm going to put this guy. So this one will go here, and this one will go here, just to prevent any leaks. So I put that piece of PEX in there. All right, now I'm going to basically get this all covered up. Move it over so you guys can see a little better. And then we got to get it in here. Here I'm going to just push it in really hard, get it to fill, because that's where I think I was having a leak before, where it was coming into the crankcase from that bar oil. There we go. All right, so I've got all this taken care of here. We're going to close off this MotoSeal, put it aside for a minute, get the hands clean. Just spray a little brake parts cleaner on a rag, and that helps you take everything off your fingers. All right, so then we're going to line this up for right now the best we can. Okay, and push it in. Now, because we know that there's also issues with these holes leaking here, and I think the main one that was leaking was this lower one, I also have some regular fuel line that actually fits in here. So what I'm going to do is put some to sleeve the bottom of the ones that I can fit that fuel line into. And I'm just going to put a little bit in there. Let's see how far I can get that to go. Yeah, I can get that to go about that far. So I'll just cut a piece. Okay. And not only that, I'll get some MotoSeal on here. Just kind of put it on like that. Slip this guy on. Again, I'm doing this, I thought through this. Doing it sometimes is different than thinking through it. You run into other issues, but I think this will work out just fine. I'll just go ahead and put this in like this, and then try to drive it in. Okay. I'm not going to drive it in all the way, it's just sealing there. Now I'm going to go the opposite side. Again, try and see how much, if I can, get any of this tubing in there. Looks like this much will go. Cut a piece of it. All right. Get some of this on here. And get this started. And again, this fuel line might get hard over time from the heat and all that, but at least it'll have that MotoSeal on it too. So we'll go crisscross. Okay, it looks like it's squeezing out, which is what we want. Okay, can we get any fuel line in here? I don't think so. These are too small. Again, they really did different things here. So what we'll do here is just put a big goop of this in here and let it just ride, because we can't get any tube in there. All right. Put the cap on, and hopefully this will stop it from leaking like it did before. All right, we have that smaller tube on the other side of this. There we go. And we'll do the same with this. All right, guys, so you see all that MotoSeal came out of there. It went right through the hole. And hopefully it will keep everything sealed as we have it. Now we try to turn this, it turns nice and freely. And you could hear it pumping, you could see it right there. Everything looks good. We can even put some oil on here through here to make sure it gets in everywhere. So that's through the intake portion. Okay, we'll put some through the exhaust because you can see the rings right there. Yep, this is going to smoke like crazy, I understand, but we're done with this portion. Everything is kind of sealed up here. Looks like everything kind of worked really well. What I'm going to also do to make sure we don't get any issues is just take a little bit more MotoSeal and just put it on the edges here. All right, that should do it. Got that little rag. It had a little brake parts cleaner on it. So next, I do have some fuel line that's really good to put on the oil tank. So what I did with the oil tank is I used caliper paint after cleaning the oil tank and everything, I just gave it another fresh coat. There was a lot of paint missing off the bottom here and all that. See, it looks kind of nice. I did make sure all these oil holes were nice and clean. So now what we can do is get the filter and kind of let it rest over here, probably sideways, because it kind of sits kind of nice in here like that to get the lowest portion. So we need to make sure it's long enough. So just put that in. And I just cleaned that filter with just regular, just with the brake parts cleaner and just some shop air. There we go. And then we'll make sure it's long enough here to sit at the bottom. And again, it likes to sit in here, so we need to make sure we have enough line for that. Kind of like that. There we go. There. And this can get messy as you go along, but that's okay. That's the name of the game. So we'll just put this kind of up right now, so when I go to put this on, I'll make sure that it's captured here and then put it on the oil tank, and we'll just get some more of this MotoSeal on here on both sides. All right, so go ahead and make sure you put it on with a thin coat. You see, this stuff is very stretchy, and it's great for uneven surfaces and some casting defects as you run into sometimes. Make sure you do not get it into these holes that are for the vacuum and for distributing the oil. So just kind of try to be gingerly around those, not too much. Don't get it in there, because that will hinder your flow. All right. Again, same on this. These holes should be watched out for, but the ones that get the bolts through them, go ahead and put it around to make sure you don't have any leakage. Because you got to remember, you're going to be bumping this into things. It's that seal is going to take a big beating, and what you don't want is for it to start developing a leak because you don't have enough sealer. But also you don't want too much where it gets into these holes that feed your bar oil, because this one definitely goes into this trough for the bar oil right here. So you don't want to get too much into it. But for these, go ahead and just goober it in there. Now this one is for the bolt to go through. I'm going to actually put some in here that's a little extra, and same with this one. These are through holes. I don't know why they did them this way, why they don't provide a gasket that goes in there, but we'll just do this for now. All right. So now we will get these onto each other. So we'll, first of all, the best place for this guy is right into that trough. So make sure he's sitting in there like that. And then line up these holes the best you can. Okay, that's one. And you do have a few minutes to work with this, but not too much. All right, so since we've got that on there, let's go ahead and there we go. This is a 10 millimeter. There we go. For that one, just kind of stand it up here. Okay. All right, you can see it squirted it all out, and we'll just leave it like this. Let's see if I can look inside here. And it's exactly where I want that pickup to be, in that little trough at the lowest. So we're good to go here. All right, guys, I hope you found this informative. As you can see, it's the power cylinders together. Everything moves freely. We'll wait 24 hours before we do anything with this, because we want to make sure all these all the sealer is cured, but it'll just sit here. And again, thank you for watching. Please subscribe, give us a thumbs up. And as I mentioned before, if you want to learn more about saws and two-stroke engines, I think Tinman is a really good guy to take a look at. He's a sweetheart of a guy and really knows his stuff. I'm an engineer by trade, so I did appreciate what he had from all his years of knowledge on this. This is my first time dabbling in something like this, and I enjoy tinkering, so this was very, very enjoyable for me to do, and I hope you guys learned something as well. All right, have a wonderful, wonderful day, and God bless.